Kia ora, talofa, namaste, haramai, and welcome to the Niche Cast. We're from the niche-cache.com, where you can read about Aotearoa sport, and guess what? It's a fantastic time to be loving Aotearoa sport because we're top of the world in a couple of different things, and just some crazy stuff is happening for Aotearoa sporting teams and a certain football team from Auckland as well. We've got a lot to discuss on our podcast today. Obviously, you can read about it on our website, thenichecache.com. You could have also got our Monday reactions on Monday, funny enough, through our newsletter, which comes out via Substack, thenichecache.substack.com. And that is a completely free newsletter that comes out every Monday and Friday evening, full of New Zealand sports notes and nuggets that help us prepare for the podcast yarns, help us prepare for the deep dive yarns, and just serve as a nice little in-between between the information we need and the deep dives we whip out for the website, theniche-cache.com. And of course, if you like what we're doing at the Niche Cache, you can subscribe on YouTube. You can make sure you're tapping in on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram and whatever other platform you desire. And then if you got a bit of a generous bone in your body, you can also help us deliver this New Zealand sports content by signing up to our Patreon, patreon.com/EL Niche Cache, which is a couple of dollars a month. If you got a free Substack subscription, you can upgrade to a paid Substack subscription. And there's also the Buy Me a Coffee option as well. We record our Niche Cast on Tuesdays. We also deliver a bonus subscriber podcast on Thursdays that is only for folks on Patreon and for folks with a paid Substack subscription. And this week it's going to be another funky old subscriber podcast because we have Ford Trophy cricket being played on Wednesday. So we'll react to that. We've got the Kiwis and Kiwi Ferns playing in Christchurch this weekend. So we will have the teams named Tuesday evening. We're recording this on Tuesday morning, so we'll be able to discuss the Kiwis and Kiwi Ferns in greater depth. We'll also be previewing Auckland City, Wellington Phoenix, and we'll be touching on any other Flying Kiwis, I reckon, because I don't know if we're going to put the spotlight on the Flying Kiwis in today's Niche Cast, but that is to say, if you're supporting us on Patreon, if you're supporting us with a paid Substack subscription, we deliver another podcast every Thursday. This is a kind of a 2-hour podcast, the Niche Cast, our subscriber podcast, bonus podcast. That's an hour just full of Aotearoa sport as a bonus, strictly for the folks supporting us on Patreon and with a paid Substack subscription. I'm just going to come out the gate. How have you processed the drastic turnarounds of the Blackcaps and White Ferns? Like, what have you been thinking about? What have you have you come to any conclusions? Are you just feeling a little bit goofy like myself all over the show? Like, how have you processed recent cricket events for Aotearoa?
Definitely a little bit goofy. That is, I think that's unavoidable because it's been just like one extreme to the other, which is absolutely crazy. One of the worst Blackcaps performances in a long time, followed by one of the best Blackcaps performances in a long time. And not just one of the worst White Ferns performances, because you can't really nail it down to a single performance. It was basically just 2 years, maybe more, of just increasingly less faith in their ability to win cricket games, and all of a sudden get into a tournament mode. And again, it's not like there was one game that's just throughout. They did lose to Australia in the group phase, but other than that, just good, solid, consistent cricketing performances and contributions all around. And Amelia Kerr is the best player in the world now, and like, it's just the extremes of it are too much for a mortal mind to fathom. It can't be done. So I don't know how we're gonna find like logical stuff to talk about today. But I will say there was fortune in each of them. You know, a lot of fortune. The White Ferns won the World Cup without having to beat Australia or England, who are the two teams that combined to beat them in 10 consecutive games earlier this year. Like, that's pretty cool. It was nice. It was nice of the fates to align like that, where the teams that knocked them out were the teams we had to play, and then we beat those teams. So we beat the teams that beat the teams, but we didn't beat the teams. Which, hey, that's how tournaments work. And you get, I don't know, these things just align sometimes, especially in tournament sport, where just you just find yourself in the right place at the right time. And if you can take those opportunities, which is still pretty difficult to do, and it's still a pretty astounding thing how the White Ferns were able to just click as they did, then that's what can happen, is sometimes you just win these things. Frankly, if the Blackcaps had won the 2019 World Cup, which arguably they didn't lose, they just tied, but still, we could have said similar things about that. You know, they went into that tournament not quite on such an extreme kind of like I don't know, longevity of struggles, but they went into that 2019 ODI World Cup. We didn't know what their best 11 was. They were jumping around, but is Colin Munro the opener? Is Henry Nichols the opener? And they, you know, jumping around a little bit with their seam attack as well, and they had some pretty sketchy results during the group phase of that as well. And there was, I think, a rained off game against India or Australia. I can't remember who. There was a rained off game that was very much in the Blackcaps' favor for getting them a point that helped them get through to the semis. And then the semi itself against India was rain affected, played over 2 days, you know. Of course, all the luck that aligned for the Blackcaps in that disappeared in the final when they decided that they'll give the trophy to the other team for a completely random just quirk in the rules, I don't know, which they immediately shamed afterwards because they realized it was stupid. But you know, the bad luck that the Blackcaps, well, actually, you know what, the Blackcaps did balance out some of that luck probably in their World Test Championship run as well. And now come to think of it, you know, there were things about that where the teams that we got to play and with who was at home and who was away, and then just the yeah, there's definitely some alignment there as well. It's just these how these tournaments work, is it's not necessarily the best team over the, like, league play tends to lead to the best team over an extended period of time where everyone plays everyone an even number of times and blah blah blah. You don't necessarily get that in tournament play, which is why it's fun, because it's unpredictable. And because it's unpredictable, things can happen, like the White Ferns winning the World T20. So that was awesome. Blackcaps also obviously got a bit of luck in beating India and some places. I mean, just the way the weather worked out to give them a nice seam-friendly wicket in India, and the way that Rohit Sharma won the toss and decided he'd rather bat on that surface. That was nice. But then at the same time, just like the White Ferns they had an opportunity, but they took advantage of it. The Blackcaps had an opportunity. They took advantage of it. Some very good bowling and a few little spells during the rest of that test, or even after bowling them out for 46. It could have spun. Like, they could have gone the other way. And there are a few little pivotal moments. I think the Southee Ravindra partnership was big. And then obviously the second new ball, but the replacement second new ball, where India had taken the lead in the second innings, but then O'Rourke came through with 3 quick wickets and Matt Henry swept up the tail after Rishabh Pant had smashed the first new ball into the stands, and they lost it and had to get a replacement, and the replacements was getting way more seam movement. So that worked out nicely as well. Little things, but then you also have to take advantage. So that's probably a much longer answer than you're anticipating, but this is the point about when you're feeling a little bit goofy about these things. It's very hard to articulate, you know?
So, I mean, I asked you how you're processing it, and you just processed it all right.
And
then.
I processed it on the spot. Yeah.
Two things based on what you just said.
Yep.
Far too much luck, Chad. I mean, it's sport, like it's life. You like things fall in your favor, things don't fall in your favor. Who cares? Like, we're just like, it doesn't matter. I like no like opposition. Some of the least likable sports teams in the world, they are going to say, "Oh, yeah, you only won this because this happened. You're gonna blah, blah." Who cares? It's life. Like, I get lucky, you get lucky. Some days we have shit days. Some days we have good days. It's life. Some days you're losing. Some days you're winning. I mean, it's just life, and it's a perfect encapsulation of this weird old world that we live in, and the imperfection of sports is another beautiful thing. You also just hijacked my. I guess it's not much of a hot take right now because Amelia Kerr is the best women's cricketer in the world, and that's pretty awesome. It's just pretty awesome to just take a moment and celebrate Amelia Kerr as the best cricketer in the world. I mean, she, men or woman, she's got a case. Like, she's one of the best bowlers in the world. She's one of the best batters in the world. She's one of the best fielders in the world. I don't know. Like, there's no flaws in her game to suggest that anyone's better than her, men or woman. But we can safely say that Amelia Kerr is the best female cricketer in the world, and she has just had a massive moment winning the T20 World Cup for Aotearoa. Big performance in the final, along with the rest of the 5 White Ferns, which we will obviously discuss in a jiffy. And I'm curious what mindfulness you conjured up in this period. Hopefully you don't need to process the mindfulness as you just process the history of New Zealand cricket in 5 minutes, but we'll see how you go.
Well, you want the history in 5 minutes? We could go a lot longer on that. I didn't even get into the Blackcaps record in India. I do like the point about luck, though, because that is true. Like, and it's also true that, like, luck is not enough. You get lucky sometimes, you don't some other times. Sport is volatile like that, sweet as. You got to take advantage when it's your day, but like, the luck won't win you these games alone. You also got to take, you got to grab that opportunity with both hands. But I do have a bit of mindfulness from Mr. William Butler Yeats. Hearts are not to be had as a gift. Hearts are to be earned, which feels very. That feels quite pivotal right now as a Kiwi sports fan. You go through, especially as a Kiwi cricket fan, like you go through the difficult stuff, and then you get these beautiful outcomes where the White Ferns are world T20 champions and the Blackcaps just won a Test match in India for the first time in 36 years. We earned these hearts.
I think it's the other way around. They earned our hearts.
That's both are true.
Because for a while it was kind of like it was just meant like we were just because they're New Zealand sports teams, they were just meant to have our hearts. We were meant to give our hearts to them just because we're fans of New Zealand sport. Whereas like in different stages, these teams kind of earn the admiration of your heart in a sporting sense. And one of those teams is definitely the White Ferns, who just comprehensively dispatched South Africa. There was a quote, and I was kind of following this because Fidus Munda was tracking South Africa throughout the tournament as if, I mean, obviously she's South African, and obviously South Africa's pretty good at cricket, and it was all being delivered as if South Africa were destined to win the T20 World Cup. And this is a pretty crazy paragraph that I'm about to read, but I don't want to read it and poo-poo any situation that is going on in South Africa. Big respects to the nation of South Africa. Love you. Love your sports. Love what you're doing. But I think the White Ferns just really needed this T20 World Cup. If you know what the White Ferns have been up to, I think they really needed this T20 World Cup. And the paragraph I'm about to read is a bit of a long bow, but it's interesting nonetheless. Quote, arguably, South Africans needed this more than New Zealanders, who at least have an ODI World Cup to their names. That's the White Ferns. Arguably, South Africans, who battle poverty, crime, corruption, and hardship, are more in need of hope than New Zealanders, whose country is in the top 10 on global living standard indexes. But South Africans also know from experience how to move on, and they will do that quickly. Once the tears have dried, they will realize in just a year's time at the ODI World Cup in India, they will have a chance to go again. And as South Africans always do, they will. I think the White Ferns are going to go again. they're going to try. And as with all Aotearoa sports teams, we're just a little old nation. 4 million, 4.5, 5 million, but we're always competing at the highest level, and that's the point of the nichecache. Aotearoa is the best sports nation in the world because kg for kg, translation, per capita, we do the craziest shit in sport, frequently. But it's overlooked. But of course, Aotearoa is also just the best nation in the world, so we don't necessarily battle the poverty, crime, corruption, and hardship that other nations do. So it's a bit of I'm kind of talking through a messy situation, but my first point, Aotearoa is an amazing country. That Munda's basically saying New Zealand's so good that they didn't need this T20 World Cup. New Zealand has it so easy, they didn't need to win this T20 World Cup, and I agree. I mean, the sun's shining, we're all cruising around, there's a beach over there, there's a bush over there, you got vitamins growing over there, you got minerals growing over there, you got fungi growing over there, you got the birds, you got, Aotearoa is just an amazing nation. You've got the Temple of Mount Smart full of different people, different ages, different cultural backgrounds, families, blokes on the piss, just to watch a football game. Like, New Zealand is a fantastic country. I agree with that. And I still think the White Ferns really needed that T20 World Cup win, if you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, and respectfully, I don't think South Africa winning the Women's World Cup T20 would have done a whole lot to solve poverty, or I'm not exactly sure what the equivalence is supposed
but it
to
gives
be.
a bit of inspiration, like fair play. Like,
yeah,
we can't speak on their issues, right? Like, we can't talk to them.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, I guess really it's just a poetic turn of phrase is the point. But that's from the perspective we're coming at this at. The White Ferns really, I mean, they haven't had a lot of good news stories for a few years, and they've had a lot of I don't know. There's been a fair bit of trying to turn average stuff into good luck stories. Like, let's highlight the young players who've been elevated onto contracts or whatever, or talking about winning the last game of the of a series that you were otherwise going to be whitewashed in. Is like, yeah, this is progress. This is proof that we're on the right path. And you get this trend in a lot of sports. It's very much not a White Ferns thing. I think White Ferns are on the low end of the scale. Like, people will recognize this, where when a sports team or an athlete is successful, it probably is universal, but we're talking about sports, so we'll keep it on the sports sort of lens. You often get this, like, I don't know, this reaction, like, yeah, all the hard stuff we went through to get to this point was all just part of the plan. It was part of the process. We had to do that in order to get this. Whereas maybe what no one likes to admit is maybe you could have been, like, maybe the White Ferns could have been this good all along if they'd not gotten in their way with some weird selections.
Can we just stay on that one?
Bad development, and
can we just stay on that? Because I've had to do I've had to go.
It's a difficult one to pass, I've
had to go deep into the mangroves, because we have been rather critical of what the White Ferns are doing, and it's like, ultimately, I'm just trying to release everything from the past, because, like, yes, I think the White Ferns' woes and their losing and the way their team was managed was completely unnecessary. The White Ferns could have just stayed a top 4 team if they selected mature, reliable, experienced cricketers. They didn't need to rebuild. And I'm confident that if they went through a regular kind of selection process and selecting the best cricketers, either they are ready to do the job and they are reliable to do the job in these tournaments, maybe the ODI World Cup in New Zealand where the White Ferns sucked, and then the T20 World Cup in South Africa last year where they didn't make the semi-finals. I think they could have done better in those tournaments with more reliable players. Ultimately, though, the best players for the White Ferns, aside from the best female cricketer in the world, Amelia Kerr, were Georgia Plummer. It was Eden Carson. It was Izzy Gaze. It was Brooke Halliday. It was Rosemary Mayer. So, like, I don't think the pain and suffering of the last few years was necessary, but we kind of got there in the end.
Yeah, we did, and whether they had, yeah, I just don't want to throw out the idea that they might have been this good all along, and they were hampering their own pathway. What's the word? Hampering their own performances with all of the weirdness that was going around there. But at the same time, like, I don't know, like this. Yeah, Georgia Plummer is such a crazy case because she was so clearly chucked in before she was ready, and the talent identification was never the problem. Like the ability was never the problem. Everyone could see how good Georgia Plummer was. She just kept getting out for less than 20, often less than 10, and it's pretty clear why that was. It was a lack of experience, and it was maybe a little bit of deer in the headlights stuff, and just being thrown in at the deep end and asked to swim, and just the development. And I think. Because one of the prevailing things about the White Ferns during their losing streaks, despite Sophie Devine saying a lot of stuff to the contrary, but it was pretty clear to see like that just looked like a depressing team. And maybe they were real good and chummy off the field and stuff. Like that kind of is irrelevant. Stephen Adams talks about this a lot. They ask him about this chemistry with teammates, like you guys going out to dinners and stuff like this. And he said this consistently at a few different teams. He's like, well, yeah, sometimes, but like that stuff's irrelevant. You don't have to be best friends with your teammate. The thing about chemistry is how well you can play together. So I think the White Ferns, there's a lot of good like camaraderie and stuff like that. And you saw that, like we know that's true because you saw them after the World Cup win, dancing in the sheds and doing a little sing along out in the pitch. Amelia Kerr, of course, the one on the guitar leading the way, still out there being the most crucial player.
Like best female cricketer in the world, maybe the best cricketer in the world, maybe just the best human in the world.
Quite possibly, yeah. The most talented person, I think that's up there.
No,
I'm sure there's plenty.
I'm going best human. Most talented implies that you don't have a bit of juice, you don't have the mana. Amelia Kerr is 24 years old and she is full of Aotearoa mana. So I'm sticking with best human.
Well, I don't think those two things contradict each other. I think that she can be the best human and the most talented human. I think she can be each of them and the best cricketer. I guess that's brought in within the wider tempo there.
I'm just trying to give her one trophy, not 5 different trophies.
She's already got she got player of the tournament and I think probably, I don't know if there's a trophy for player of the final. There might just be a big novelty check or something. The actual trophy for winning the tournament, that's there too. I don't think she's short on trophies. I think she knows how to carry those things. She probably just needs a wheelbarrow to get through customs afterwards. But yeah, what was I saying?
I don't know, but sorry for interrupting, but I will just, this is a good opportunity because based on what you're saying, can you have a go at guessing Georgia Plummer's T20 batting average and strike rate after she just won the T20 World Cup as the best batter for New Zealand in the tournament?
So her career numbers, not what she did in the tournament.
Her career numbers that are now boosted by her T20 World Cup.
And I'm guessing we're still only talking about an average of, 15, strike rate 90.
She's averaging 15 with a strike rate of 98.
Okay, so it was low on the strike rate. We're doing all right there. But what were her tournament numbers?
150 runs at an average of 25, strike rate of 119. And for context, Susie Bates also scored 150 runs, but she had a strike rate of 93.
So pretty awesome from
that
Georgia Plymouth there.
awesome from Georgia Plymouth. Same story, Izzy Gaze, who was also, I thought, like, I still don't know if she's the best wicketkeeper from New Zealand, but like all the other players we're a bit dubious on, she did a job in the T20 World Cup. 28 runs at a strike rate of 127. Maddie Green was the only player with a higher strike rate, 130, and yeah, hold fire on Maddie Green. But Izzy Gaze, T20 record after the World Cup. What do you reckon?
Batting average of, she did get a not out 50 against England I think that boosted her thing a bit, but in one of those many 10 as part of the 10 losses in a row, it's 12.
14.4, strike rate of 105.8.
All right.
So like
and
that,
like this is yeah, go.
that puts into context like what these players have done. And yes, there's been a lot of talk about the losing streak. They were 2-14 since the start of last summer, heading into the World Cup. So it's yes, the losing streak's an issue, but as I keep saying, they lost the T20 series to Pakistan with the same team in New Zealand last summer. And now they are T20 World Cup champions, having beaten India, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, West Indies, South Africa.
And I remember what I was saying before, but it was about how the point I was going to make about how the White Ferns atmosphere within games around those defeats was just depressing. Yeah, it was just like a weight on everyone's shoulders. Everyone looked gloomy and sad. It was there was like a overcast. Just I mean, it's so weird because at this tournament you saw the opposite, and the players who were struggling the most with it, who just looked like they didn't know how to play their natural game in international cricket, probably because they weren't given enough time to develop their natural game in domestic cricket. But that's a whole other point. Like the players who were struggling the most with that were amazing at the T20 World Cup. They didn't win this because they won this partly because Amelia Kerr is the best player in the world, but it wasn't like Sophie Devine and Susie Bates were also scoring 50s every game. They weren't. They were getting wide contributions from a lot of different players, including a lot of players who had struggled to sort of justify their place in the team for a long time. And it just, I don't know, it's hard not to look at this and look at what came before it and think like, confidence is a hell of a drug, man. Like if you just once you start get that belief, it's a whole different thing. Like they look like whole different players, and it's like, yeah, that's the ability that everyone, from selectors to fans on down, like everyone could see that ability is there, and just a matter of being able to tap into it internationally, which I do still think is something that falls back pretty heavily upon the coaching staff for sort of I mean, there's the throwing players in too soon and not letting them develop more naturally, but there's also just despite what everyone says about belief and feeling they were on the right path, it was very hard to feel like the players actually felt that during those defeats. And obviously losses are going to weigh down on you anyway, whether you feel you're on the path or not. You're going to have doubts when you're just losing games of cricket. But I guess the trick now is to see, does this, like, can they remain this version of the White Ferns moving forward? Now that they've got the belief, now that they've got the justification, the vindication, the proof that they're good enough, that this is the level that they can hit. They've got a trophy to show for it. Like, can they maintain this moving forward? Because if they can, again, I don't think I think the word you used before, necessary. I don't think that stuff was necessary. I don't think this has been a smooth development path for this team. I don't think ripping it up, I agree, it's bad as well. I don't think ripping it up and starting again with a bunch of young players who maybe weren't quite ready for this and chucking them straight in and just like letting them play their way through all of the struggles, I don't think that was necessary. But one way or another, something clicked at the T20 World Cup, and just like, how many players would you say in that team had just brought out career best form over the 2 or 3 weeks of this tournament? There's at least 6. including Amelia Kerr, but also, Georgia Plym is the best she's ever played internationally. Rosemary Mayer, you probably make a case for Eden Carson and Izzy Gaze as well. Like
Brooke Halliday.
Brooke Halliday, yeah. Couldn't
Well,
say it
so
about
wait,
Base or Divine because they've been so good, but that's the point is they didn't have to rely on the same players. They got all these different ones stepping up, and can they maintain that moving forward? Because I don't know. I'm relative like this was a bit of alignment in that case as well. Like everyone just hit form at the right time. There was just a bubble or something. But now that these players whose biggest problem beforehand seems to be a lack of belief, now that they've got proof that they're good enough, well, that just seems like an immensely positive thing for the White Ferns. This feels like an actual you've turned a corner. Like this team can be good and competitive like they used to be again.
in the final, Brooke Halliday hit 38 runs with a strike rate of 135.7. Maddie Green, 12 not out, strike rate of 200. Like that's to finish the innings and take them to 150. Teams weren't scoring 150 easily. South Africa finished on 126. So like Halliday's knock kind of defined the whole White Ferns success. Halliday's a good player. I don't think she's a dominant force in New Zealand cricket. She hadn't I reckon she's a really good one-day player. And can you have a guess at Brooke Halliday's T20 batting record after the T20 World Cup?
Average 16. Strike rate of 85.
Brooke Halliday is averaging 13.9 with a strike rate of 97. Right, so, but in the final, she just whacked runs to take the White Ferns beyond 150. Schemer Sawyer, shout out, big man. Still think you're a bit of a schemer. However, it is undeniable that Craig McMillan is a coaching guru. Just joking. Like he's a very good coach, but shout out to Craig McMillan for his success. I did see Craig McMillan out the back of the wire to just like, wait, what am I doing here?
He didn't know the words to the song.
The Schemer Sawyer, like we can, like the White Ferns, they're playing against India on Thursday, and I don't care about that series at all. It feels a bit like the Olympics with Lydia Ko. Lydia Ko won a gold medal at the Olympics to seal her position as one of New Zealand's best Olympians ever, the best golfing Olympian ever. She's won a bronze, silver, and a gold medal in the Olympics. I don't give two hoots about the LPGA Tour anymore. Like, Lydia Ko's just put herself on a whole different pedestal of an Olympic glory, not just LPGA Tour success. Like, the White Ferns playing against India on Thursday, and who cares? Kind of falls into my disdain, and I'm very confident in my disdain of the little three cricket nations, especially the little two cricket nations, England and India. Don't really care about the White Ferns touring India right now. My point. Schemer Sawyer. So there is that quick turnaround, and yes, I'll be tracking results. Yes, it'll be interesting to see how they build on the T20 World Cup, but I'm definitely kind of holding fire. I'm not judging the White Ferns on what happens in India, because to be honest, they're probably still horsed. But they're going to show up in India hungover, and that's okay. They deserve to.
Sort of feels like that tour happening so soon after the World T20 final kind of suggests that New Zealand cricket didn't expect them to make the final,
Yeah, for sure.
Like that short turnaround kind of says that.
But Schemer Sawyer, he's got a Commonwealth Games medal. He's got a T20 World Cup championship. Like, I don't know. Yeah, we've asked questions about him, but ultimately, they did well at the Commonwealth Games. They've done well at the T20 World Cup. Like, given how they performed in other events, that's a pretty good, haul from the last 4 years.
He's a tournament coach, obviously.
You did mention the senior players of the White Ferns, and they were solid in the tournament. Sophie Devine scored a 50, but she wasn't destructive. as we've come to know Sophie Devine to be, 107.5 strike rate. Susie Bates was solid at the top of the order. She did tie with Georgia Plymouth for the most runs, but not the highest strike rate, so it wasn't a necessarily dominant performance from Susie Bates. Leah Tahuhu, another veteran who was solid, 5 wickets and an average of 22.8, 7.1 RPO. Sophie Devine was the only bowler who was more expensive than Leah Tahuhu. So this wasn't necessarily a White Ferns T20 World Cup victory built on the mahi of the best players, which is kind of in tune with what I was saying in the lead up and throughout the T20 World Cup. Like, for the White Ferns to perform at their highest possible level, they need their role players to outperform what they've been doing. They need the youngsters to step up, because I don't know if like Sophie Devine, Susie Bates and Leah Tahuhu are at their dominant best. However, what you're saying about the tough phases for the White Ferns, like, credit to the leadership, because you got to keep your head up, you got to keep trooping, you got to keep grinding, keep battling. And yes, there were many times where it looked like just a depressing team. There were many times where they lost games despite being in winnable positions. There were many times where they just had bad vibes permeating all over the show. And none of that's good. None of that was fun to experience. None of that was enjoyable to highlight or observe. And somehow the leaders in this team kept them on track to then tap into the I did see this as well, because we do the YouTube podcast, we just try to put names and New Zealand and stuff like that in the title to try tap into a bit of the algo. But you, in your infinite wisdom, and we discussed this in our podcast last week, you named the Apple and Spotify version of the podcast, so have a listen on Apple and Spotify, the Positive Vibration Dispatch Center. And
which was a quote that you said, I'm pretty sure.
Oh, definitely. And it worked.
It worked.
We tapped into the Positive Vibration Dispatch Center. We sent our mana waves. We sent the positive energy in the direction of Bengaluru and Dubai, or the UAE. And guess what happened? They won. So I think when I was like asking you about processing it, I'm like, maybe we just got
waiting for the credit. Yeah.
Well, no, but I'm like, maybe we just got to tap into the dispatch center a few more times. Like, this is all we need to do. So, with that in mind, folks, we've got to send some positive energy, mana waves south. We've got to send it to Christchurch. Kiwis and Kiwi Ferns playing in Christchurch, they need it, because it's going to be an interesting time for the New Zealand Rugby League teams. However, I admire the leaders, because if you're down in the dumps for that long, it can be very difficult to find a way out. And I think they did well to steer this group in the right direction, in a positive motion, and they won the T20 World Cup. So that deserves credit. And it's kind of like I've got 3 levels. You got the leaders who kept them on track, kept them positive, maintained belief in the team. You got Amelia Kerr, who is her own masterpiece, and then you've got the younger players and or the role players. So younger players, Plymouth, Gaze, Carson. Role players, Rosemary Meir, Brooke Halliday and Maddie Green. And I think they all just did enough. They did their jobs and they helped New Zealand win a T20 World Cup. So it's very good. Can you just help me set this up? So you mentioned 2019, who cares? Let's brush that aside. Let's just stick with the pandemic.
We don't speak of 2019, yes.
Well, it's more just to set up a stage of New Zealand cricket. So in And this is the crazy thing. Like, I would like it to be less volatile. I'd like it to be like less ups and downs. Because to be honest, it kind of like these achievements, or this achievement, winning the T20 World Cup, it's kind of like if the Warriors won the wooden spoon and then won the NRL. So if the Wellington Phoenix won the wooden spoon, then won the A-League, it's like, do we need the extremes? But I guess you do need the extremes to for the full experience. So we won the 2021 World Test Championship. Then came the ODI World Cup in New Zealand, which was to be honest, that was probably the most depressing event for me with the White Ferns. That was a home World Cup, or a co-hosted World Cup, in which the White Ferns that was the epitome of their kind of depressing vibe. That was the 22 World Cup, sorry. And then, so we've had, I think the T20 World Cup, there was a T20 World Cup at the start of 2020, which the White Ferns didn't make the semi-finals. Then there was a T20 World Cup in South Africa last year where the White Ferns didn't make the semi-finals. The Blackcaps followed their World Test Championship with a less productive World Test Championship, but also with I think they made semi-finals in the ODI T20 World Cup in Australia, then the ODI World Cup. So that's holding steady. That's what the Blackcaps do. They just make semi-finals of World Cups. No wakan wharis, easy mahi. But then we had the T20 World Cup where they were pretty bad. And that wasn't good. So
the second World Test Championship was pretty rough as well.
Yes.
Around the same time, really, to be honest.
So it's put it all together. It's like we've had some big highs, winning a World Test Championship, winning a T20 World Cup. We've had moments of just holding steady with the Blackcaps making semi-finals in an ODI World Cup and a T20 World Cup. And we've had some lows. So we've had missing an ODI World Cup semi-final, missing a T20 World Cup semi-final, then missing another T20 World Cup semi-final, as well as doing nothing in the World Test Championship. I think holding steady in the World Test Championship for the Blackcaps is top 5. And they're 4th right now. Let me check. Where did they finish in the other one? 6th. So I'm sticking with top 5. I think top 5 is a good spot for the Blackcaps in the World Test Championship. So they were below that mark in the second edition, and they're above that mark right now. So it's kind of like all areas of the spectrum are covered with the New Zealand cricket teams in the last 4 years. So we've experienced everything in the last 4 years, and I think that goes into the boil up of like emotions and feelings. We're just like, what is going on? Because it's just been all over the show. We've had big highs, we've had big lows, and we've had holding steady, because what do Kiwis love to do? Just hold steady.
I reckon top 4 World Test Championship, because then you get that consistency with the sort of semi-finals top 4 kind of mark, you know? You just keep it even though you don't actually get semi-finals for a Test Championship. But
well, there's 9
you're
teams.
on track for that, and they didn't do it last time. So yeah, so if you finish 5th, you're not bottom half, but you're also not top half. You're just literally the middle team, you know?
Yeah, but I think if you're finishing worse than 5th, then it's a concern. If you're finishing better than 5th, that's pretty good, and 5th is just holding steady.
Yeah, okay. We'll say that. Top 4 is good. 5th is just average, not good, not bad, and below 5th is not you're struggling there. That seems like a fair gauge for Blackcaps.
Just interrupt that one more time.
Until they get rid of the World Test Championship at some point, because they're always changing these things, but we'll see.
Oh, jeepers creepers. I need to kill the buzz. Just for the White Ferns, they should be making the semi-finals of every World Cup. So that's why missing the semi-finals was bad. New Zealand, I think New Zealand cricket teams should be aiming for the semi-finals in any World Cup. I think the White Ferns, in the context of women's cricket, they are a semi-final team. And that is the benchmark for the White Ferns. That's what I'm gauging success or mediocrity on, is do they make the semi-finals? And to be honest, that is the exact same measurement I use for the Blackcaps.
The exact same measurement, like
making the semi-finals.
As in it's like an expectation for the White Ferns, it's an expectation for the Blackcaps, or it sort of feels like there is. So for the Blackcaps to make the semi-finals, they've achieved something, whereas for the White Ferns, it's sort of like that should be the minimum, just because of where each of those teams sit in the respective.
It's not an expectation; it's a measurement. So, do you make the semi-finals or not? Is it good or bad? Like the Blackcaps always make the semi-finals, so that's where they're at. And the White, like, there's in women's cricket, you got England, Australia, South Africa, New Zealand, West Indies, India. That's 6 pretty competitive teams, and if you're the top 4, you're doing pretty well. So I don't think it's like easier to make the semi-finals for the White Ferns compared to the Blackcaps, but either way, making the semi-finals is my personal measurement.
Yep, very cool. And well, would you say there's an ODI World Cup coming up next? Is for the White Ferns, like that's the next sort of mate. Because what's their ODI form like compared to what we've known about the T20 stuff?
This is like too far off. I don't know. Like,
okay,
yeah,
we'll let them simmer.
They just won a T20 World Cup.
Yeah. ODI cricket doesn't matter. Who cares? Down the track.
Blackcaps.
Yeah, they did all right, eh?
I'm feeling fired up. I'm feeling super avant-garde, and you might have already caught the vibe. I'm going to say it with my chest. I don't like the little 2 nations. I actually really like Australian cricket, so I don't want to put Australia in this category. I like Australian cricket. I just kind of like their domination, and having grown up with Australian cricket and who they are, I like Australian cricket. I do not like England and India. Straight up and down, full steak and cheese pie. I don't like them as cricketing nations. I don't like them as cricketing administrators. I just don't really like them. So with that in mind, I understand that it is a historic achievement for the Blackcaps to win in India. I understand it doesn't happen very often. I understand like what a moment it is. So any cricket fan who has grown up watching cricket knows how difficult it is to win in India. When it comes to England and India, and Australia, to be honest, because we're seeing it with Australia and rugby league as well, it's all about India. It's all about England. Like, if you're not playing 5 test series, you're shit at test cricket. If you're not playing 5 test series, test cricket's dying for you. It's like, chill out. We've actually found a better way. Like, it's just more efficient and it's more effective to play 3 test series. Like, what are you doing? Well, you're going to play a whole month of test cricket? It just seems ridiculous. But they do what they want to do. I don't want to poo-poo the historic achievement. I know you're going to throw up some crazy stats about the Blackcaps winning in India, performing in India. I'm not here to downplay what you're about to say. I'm here to offer a different perspective, because when you're playing against India, in India, also like the least enjoyable commentary team probably. Like in Sri Lanka, you just got to like. I don't know who this bloke was, and I was meaning to bring it up before. Whenever there was a great shot played, he would say, authentic. That is an authentic shot. And obviously with a heavy duty Sri Lankan accent, which I'm not going to imitate, but he would just say, that's authentic. And I was like, bruh, that's a great word. And the
That is a
crispy
great word.
delivery and the way you say it, just, I love it. And part of that commentary team was Mitchell McGlenigan, who I like as a commentator. Mitchell McGlenigan was really good commentating in that Sri Lankan series, and I like him as a commentator. I actually prefer him over Ian Smith and Simon Doull. And of course, in Sri Lanka, we had Russell Arnold, who was dropping rugby bombs every second over. He was comparing Lahuru Kumara to the Kumara. Like, he had those jokes ready to go. Russell Arnold was cool, and then you had the other local Sri Lankans who were dropping the authentic yarns as well. So shout out to Sri Lanka. But when you're playing in India, it's only about India. And we saw this throughout the test, right? Like, what a great fight back from India. Yeah, cool, you lost. Yeah, you fought back. You don't deserve credit for fighting back, you lost. It's like if you're up 4-0 in a game of football and you get back into the game and it's 4-2 at the end, you're like, yeah, we're credit to the lads. We came back, we scored 2 goals. We made it a contest. You lost 4-2, chill out. And then you've got Rachin Ravindra, the hometown hero.
Well, yeah, that stuff.
he's born and raised in New Zealand, you know, like, yeah, you know, everyone knows the story about Rachin Ravindra, but it's a stretch to just say he's the hometown kid. Like, everything is delivered through this Indian lens to the extent that Simon Doull and Ian Smith are delivering their New Zealand perspectives through the Indian lens, which is kind of crazy, but it is what it is. This is what we know what we're dealing with here. My point. Yes, it's very difficult to win in India, but the Indians, I don't think they know what happened in Sri Lanka. Right? Do you, like, this is a pretty judgmental comment, but I'm pretty sure the Indians just looked down on Sri Lanka. So I don't think they had any interest in what the Blackcaps were doing in Sri Lanka, let alone what New Zealand's doing in our home summer and so on. But when you're playing India in India, it's all about India. We don't need to go into history to realize what a crazy win this was for the Blackcaps. They were literally swept a month ago in Sri Lanka. The Blackcaps had lost 4 consecutive tests. Like, all of this has happened this year. And that is the crazy turnaround that makes this victory so monumental. Yes, it's a historic achievement to win a test in India. But like the White Ferns going 2-14 in T20 internationals ahead of a T20 World Cup and winning the T20 World Cup, the Blackcaps just won a test in India after losing 4 consecutive tests. That is 2 test series sweeps back to back. That's why we were questioning the Blackcaps. That's why we were questioning the identity, the culture, the playing style, the leadership. Everything was under the microscope for the Blackcaps. That's what makes this victory so impressive to me. That's what made me so happy to see them winning in India. It's not the fact that they won in India. That test could have been played Pakistan. Could have been played in South Africa. But they stepped up to a different level. They did the necessary soul searching. They made the necessary changes. Along with the White Ferns, to be honest, the Blackcaps and the White Ferns, they reinstalled a CD worth of mana, a floppy disk worth of mana. They did that over the course of like a week. And that's what makes it so impressive.
They did it without Craig McMillan's help too, so it's even more of an achievement. I mean, like, yeah, I don't think Harsha Bogle was watching that New Zealand Sri Lanka series, so that stuff was weirdly like just not I don't know. That does seem like that should be the perspective for the Blackcaps performance, but it was very much about, of course, as we've come to expect, it was about India having a terrible start and Rohit Sharma making the wrong decision at the toss, and as India batting too aggressively and blah blah blah. And there's credit to the New Zealand bowlers given, but it's credit on the day sort of thing. It's not. It's missing the context of like, yeah, but these guys couldn't bowl Sri Lanka out 2 weeks ago, where Sri Lanka put on like 600, and from
What
that,
the
from the fourth worst first innings deficit in history to be on the wrong side of it to bowling India out in India for 46 is like there's whiplash on that change of directions.
They were literally rolled for 88.
Yeah, I tweeted the two scoreboards of that, of us out for 88 and India out for 46, and like it's a new dawn, it's a new day. That just it didn't. I don't know. I was sitting there watching that in disbelief. I'm like, what is going on? And there is an element there of, while we're talking about India and England getting annoying and trying to pester with Test cricket, India were getting a little bit basebally there in a way that I'm like, oh, are you doing this because it's trendy? Or are you doing this because it's the? I mean, they do have good aggressive batters, so there is that. Like they have the guys who can do that, and we saw that actually to a pretty good extent in in their second attempt at bat, at least for most of it until they crumbled once the new ball came through. But like it's not just that they were scoring runs and putting pressure back on the Blackcaps by putting in partnerships. Like they were scoring runs fast. They were scoring at like over 5 and over. I think there was a stat on Cricinfo about how this was like the highest RPO for spin bowlers in India maybe ever or something like that. I don't remember exactly what it was. Find out that like, they always do a little stats from the game kind of yarn. It was on one of those if anyone actually wants to know the exact one. But just the counterattacking was crazy, but also it's like two sides of the same coin, right? Because they counterattack their way into trouble in the first half, in the first innings, where they didn't have to counterattack because there was nothing to counter. It was just the start of the test. And the Blackcaps, I think there was mentioned right at the start about some nice alignments in there. The fact that we got a bouncy semi deck that didn't spin a whole lot was very good. But also there were times there with the Blackcaps, if they were showing the kind of, I don't know, the lack of grit that they showed in Sri Lanka, where there were a couple times there in that second test in Sri Lanka in particular. The first test was pretty competitive. That's its own thing. Second test, they got so much worse. And there were times in there where there were those little pivotal kind of sliding door moments where they just, they couldn't break a partnership. They couldn't they couldn't find a way back into the test. They couldn't avoid, one quick wicket becoming two quick wickets, three quick wickets while they were batting, this kind of stuff, like where they're just little moments where they're just always on the wrong side of them. And here there were times where India did fight back, and their fight back was pretty scary there for a little while. Also scary just because in the context of, I think if we'd had an actual 5-day test match, that partnership wouldn't the Sarfaraz partnership wouldn't have been as terrifying. But the other factor there was just like, well, if we bowl a team out for 46 and then draw the test match, that's almost stranger than losing the test match. But and that was definitely a possibility because there were thunderstorms forecast on day 5 at some point. I don't know if they turned up in the end. It didn't matter because Ravindra and Young got the job done. But yeah, it was some frisky moments there. But those frisky moments were followed by the Blackcaps finding a little bit of, I don't know, a little bit of courage, and slapping back when they needed to. So there were like they were in front of the test match the entire way because of how credible that first session, first innings, first 2 sessions, whatever it was, because of how incredible that was. But there were times where the version of the Blackcaps we saw in Sri Lanka might have let that test still get away from them, on top of that, which they didn't, which is a sign that, yeah, they buckled up. They figured a few things out. They looked in the mirror. They came back with I don't know, I don't like to use the cliches, but like pride in the jersey kind of stuff, whatever that's meant to signify when people say that. We got that from the Blackcaps. It was cool. And yeah, how good's Rachin Ravindra? That is handy.
We'll get into the individuals, but there was Blackcaps returning to how they play their best cricket, which none of that was evident
Absolutely
in Sri Lanka. And to be honest, Australia's
or
really good at
against
cricket.
Australia.
Australia's really good at cricket, but that series was in New Zealand.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think the Blackcaps played their best cricket in those two Test series defeats. And this is the reason why we were so down on the Blackcaps, because their catching sucked. Their fielding was just kind of good without being spectacular. They had no grit in their batting lineup, and the bowling was kind of all over the show. New Zealand kept fighting back in this test, right? First innings
sure.
with the
every
first
India
innings with the
comeback
bat
was followed by a New Zealand response.
First innings with the bat, they get off to a nice start, then they start losing wickets, and I'm thinking, well, Tom Blundell's not very good at batting right now, so he's probably going to get dismissed. He gets dismissed. Anything can happen with Glenn Phillips. Well, we know Matt Henry's going to have a whack, so yeah, they get out. And you're thinking, this is the Blackcaps that I saw a few weeks ago. Literally. Because in Sri Lanka, Rachin Ravindra was the best batter. Against Australia, Rachin Ravindra was the best batter. In that innings, Rachin Ravindra was the best batter, and no one else scored runs. And that's how it was playing out. And then suddenly, Tim Southee's there. And Tim Southee, the lighthouse, the beacon of grit and mana, salvages the innings with Rachin Ravindra. And as you said, yes, India. They're scoring runs, as they like to do in India. Who can blame them? But then you've got Matt Henry and Will O'Rourke snaring wickets. So Virat Kohli was dismissed in the 49th over. And then Sarfaraz Khan was dismissed in the 85th over. India were all out in the 100th over. Matt Henry kept showing up. Will O'Rourke kept showing up. Yes, they were hitting the spinners around, but they kept showing up. That is the Blackcaps we've come to know and love. And that was all there. Final innings. Tom Latham, he's out of form. He's gone. Holy shit. Devon Conway can barely hit the ball. And when he does hit the ball, it goes to the boundary, but he's not doing it very often. He's gone because guess what? Devon Conway just misses a straight delivery, which he's done a fair few times, but he did score runs in this test. And the Blackcaps are 35 for 2. They only need 107 to win, and they're 35 for 2, and we're all pulling our pants. It wasn't the most intense fight back from the Blackcaps, but it was a notable fight back to make sure they won this test. Will Young and Rachin Ravindra say, hey, chill out, we got this. We're going to win the test. That's the stuff the Blackcaps are really good at, playing the long game, showing up the next morning to take wickets, showing up in the next session to take wickets. That's the stuff we've come to love, let alone the catching. The ball was doing stuff in the first innings. The ball was doing stuff against Sri Lanka. Blokes weren't taking their catches. Tom Blundell dropped the sitter, and it was whoa, drama. And then suddenly Devon Conway's taking a one-hander. Michael Bracewell's taking a one-hander. Matt Henry's running around the boundary. That's the stuff we've loved. But my memory of the Sri Lankan series was Daryl Mitchell just standing at first slip and dropping a catch.
I think that's multiple memories too.
And it's well, yes, I understand conditions were favourable to the Blackcap seamers, but I also understand you probably weren't watching them play against Sri Lanka. Because Will O'Rourke was seaming it. Tim Southee was bowling pretty well in Sri Lanka. They were creating chances. Ajaz Patel, everyone was creating chances, and they just dropped catches. And that is not Blackcaps cricket. But every little element, all the connective tissue, the nuance, the intangibles that we love about the Blackcaps and New Zealand cricket teams returned in this test. And for me, we we'll get into the individuals because, as I said, Rachin Ravindra, he was the second best batter against South Africa behind Kane Williamson. He was the best batter against South Africa. He was the best batter against Sri Lanka. Best batter in this test series, in this test for New Zealand. Who was the best bowler against Sri Lanka? It was Will O'Rourke and Ajaz Patel. I remember saying that yes, the Blackcaps were swept and it sucks. It's not good. It's alarming because all those intangibles weren't there, and the tangibles like taking catches and whatnot. But the best thing about the series sweep in Sri Lanka was that Rachin Ravindra and Will O'Rourke were the best players. Like, this is like, it's one thing for Rachin Ravindra and Will O'Rourke to be really good against a South African second 11 in New Zealand. That's one thing. We now have 3.5 test series where Rachin Ravindra and Will O'Rourke are among, if not the best players for New Zealand. And that is like just something that's just so, it's just cool. It just makes me happy as a Kiwi cricket fan when we've got two freaky young talents just playing at a high level, and they're filling the team with juice, I reckon. So it's, but like we've got a consistent record of that happening, and it's just fun to see.
Yeah, the surprise factor with Will O'Rourke is gonna ease up at some point when people begin to do their scouting properly. It's always weird when you get that where it's, you know, this guy's fresh on the scene, people aren't quite aware of what he's doing. It's like, yeah, but he's had like 4 test series of consistently taking wickets. Like if you're looking at the averages, you're seeing it. You know, do a little bit more research. I think maybe he's just one of those bowlers though where it's like you have to face him maybe to quite get an idea of what you're up against, because the first innings he's bowled against every nation that he's played against 4 different teams in 5 test matches. The first innings, he's caused trouble every single time. I think he took 4 for against South Africa in his debut. He actually got 5 for in the second innings there, so he carried it on. Against Australia, he got 2 wickets in the first innings, didn't take any wickets in the second innings.
He was
against
injured.
Sri Lanka, first innings of the series. Yeah, he was, wasn't he?
He got injured in the second test against Australia.
Yeah, and I don't think he played at all, did he, in the second test? So, then in Sri Lanka, he did get a second test finally for the first time there, but his best effort there was the first innings. He took 5 for in the first innings against Sri Lanka. So then, and against India, he takes 4 for in the first innings against them. It's like the first time everyone sees him, no one seems to know what to do with this guy, which is cool. That's fun. But it is maybe something like India will have a better plan for the second test. They didn't have a better plan for the second innings necessarily because he still came through with some big wickets. But we'll see what that looks like. But that seems to be a trend with him.
It's a trend, but I mean, he also took 5 wickets in the second innings against South Africa. He only bowled 7.5 overs in the second innings against Australia, but he only conceded 1.4 RPO. He took 3 wickets in a second innings. I don't know, was that? Yeah, the second innings of the first test in Sri Lanka. So he's got. I know your point, and it's a fair point to make.
It's not saying that he's not also good, just in general, but there seems to be like there's a little bit of a peak the first time he gets unleashed on his team.
He's got 5 wickets, 1.4 RPO, 3 wickets, and 3 wickets in second innings. So maybe he's just awesome, you know.
He's pretty good all the time, yeah. I do also have a bone to pick with the Tim Southee idea because beacon lighthouse, that metaphor works in a few different ways, because Southee just has the weirdest reputation among Blackcaps fans. It's so strange, like, and the way I kept saying this, like this idea, like finally we saw Tim Southee batting for his partner, like putting in a bit of batting a bit of time, a bit of hardiness out there with the willow, and actually putting a partnership together and batting like he cares. All these kind of cliches. I'm like, Tim Southee batted, like, correct me if I'm wrong here, but my impression was Tim Southee batted the way Tim Southee always bats. He hits 4 sixes in that innings. You know? He hit 4 sixes. This is one of the biggest 6 hitters in history. I looked this up for the email yesterday. Like, he he has of the I can't remember what the number was, of like 40 something players who have hit at least 50 test match sixes. He has by far the biggest percentage of his overall runs coming from those sixes. Like most of the other guys who are up there are batters who just bat a long time, score a lot of runs, and they hit sixes. Tim Southee has scored 25% of his runs from sixes alone. This is just how he always bats. It's just he didn't get out against India, so he was able to bat time. But Rachin Ravindra was smacking the ball around in that partnership too, because I'm pretty sure he was outpacing Tim Southee for at least most of it, if not all of it. So I didn't see anything different from Tim Southee. I didn't see any kind of like Tim Southee is he's batting unselfishly. He's doing what he always does. It just worked, and it's worked several other times because it's not his first Test match 50. He's got a few of those in his career.
I thought Tim Southee, like there was a pre-match yarn about him doing some work trying to find his snap. I thought he had a snap. Like he was by 132, 133 Ks, but there's a genuine snap to his regular outswinger. Whereas like the outswing is just so sharp. It's like the only other bowler I can think of who does that is Jimmy Anderson. And if Tim Southee is bowling a little bit outswing with the wobbler, he's moving the ball both ways. And like he had a genuine look of just Tim Southee he's back at his best. But to your point, these are Tim Southee innings since the start of 2023. So it's all fairly recently in the quote unquote worst phase of his career, right? In Pakistan, Tim Southee. This goes against your point, but it's not the status quo. 10 runs at a strike rate of 27. So he faced 69 deliveries in Pakistan. So I don't know how you can think Tim Southee is a selfish batter if he's scoring 10 runs at a strike rate of 27, batting down the order in Pakistan when the Blackcaps drew that test series. Against England in Wellington, this was the test with the Blackcaps won. 73 runs at a strike rate of 149. That's a pretty good knock. We've got 25 runs at a strike rate of 125 versus Sri Lanka. That's good. Tim Southee, good stuff. In Bangladesh, 35 runs at a strike rate of 56. That's a gritty knock from Tim Southee in tough conditions. Next innings, in Bangladesh, 34 runs at a strike rate of 142. Swashbuckling, again, Tim Southee. Against Australia in Christchurch, 26 runs at a strike rate of 130. And then, yes, he is a bowler batting down the order, so he's going to not score some runs because he's like not the best batter in the team.
That's what they do. That's why they're down the order.
He's probably the 8th, 9th, maybe 10th best batter in the team, right? So he's going to have some failures, but he's got at least 5, to me, they're impressive knocks for Tim Southee since the start of 2023. Like, what more do you want?
What more do you want? Like,
and I'd also
just it's a strange reputation.
If people want Matt Henry to bat for his partner, Matt Henry is only banging sixes. That's all he's doing.
He does the same thing. He does. It's just I don't know. It's a weird thing, and I don't know why he has this like lightning rod for criticism. But I think people just look at it like a moral failing. Tim Southee just doesn't have a very good forward defense. That's all. But he hits some huge sixes. That's how he bats. That's how he's always batted.
That's how I bet. What do you have to say about Rachin Ravindra?
He's pretty bloody good. I don't know how much more there is to say. He's done it now in an ODI World Cup. Big runs, big game Rachin. He's scored a double hundred at home, was against South Africa, wasn't it? The double hundred, is that right? And he's didn't quite replicate 200, but I'm pretty sure he was one of the better batters against Australia too, right? And
leading run scorer against Australia, leading run scorer against Sri Lanka.
There you go. So that's, yeah. three series where he's right up there. This series, he's probably going to be the Blackcaps leading run scorer the way he's gone. It's not just the consistency of that though. It's he's done it at home, he's done it away, he's scored ODI runs, he's scored test runs. Hasn't really done the T20 stuff yet, but we don't need that from him. That's fine. We'll bask in him being our best test batter now, and it's just yeah the. I don't know, his ability to just score pressure runs as well is the thing that stands out the most, because both of these innings against India, like we may have bowled them out for 46 at the start, but as we saw from what happened in the rest of the test match, his 100 was crucial in the first innings. That lead couldn't have been much less than it was for the Blackcaps to remain in a dominant position in that test match like they did. And then at the end, like, yeah, he was batting at a time where Jasprit Bumrah was turning the ball around, well, seaming the ball around corners specifically. He was absolutely hostile, and he got through that. The openers didn't get through that, but Rachin Ravindra got through that. Will Young as well. Actually, really nice, classy innings. I thought really good from Will Young in both innings. He just kind of threw it away a little bit in the first one. Didn't get to go on and turn it into something good. But I'm glad he got a nod out in the second innings to boost the average, because the average does need some boosting for Will Young. But Rachin Ravindra doesn't. He's just a healthy 45 plus or something at this point in his test average, which really, when you take out the few tests at the very start where he was batting at like 7 and been asked to be a spinner and just a weird role, if you take that little segment out, I'm guessing since he got back on the team and is actually batting in a decent position, I'm assuming that average is well above 50 during that span. So in fact, I might whip out the cumulative averages.
I'm here for you.
Hey,
relax.
Yeah, help me out here. I want to know these things.
I did find it interesting though, like why on the scorecard of the broadcast is he R. Ravindra? He was the only player in the whole game who had his first initial listed. And I
think we're going to get him and Ravi Jadeja mixed up or something, because they play for different teams.
Yeah, but then because all the Indian Sri Lankans, you don't know if it's going to be their first name or their last name listed. But yeah, it was strange that Ravindra was the one dude who had his first initial listed. But Ravindra, World Test Championship, averaging 59.3. He's got more runs at a higher average than Kane Williamson. What more do you want? That's Rachin Ravindra. What are you looking at? What are you about to say?
Well, I was looking up his cumulative stats, or the reverse cumulative average. So he actually only played, I think, 3 test matches in that first little span. There was 2 against India and there was 1 against Bangladesh. Which did he play? He played the test we lost against Bangladesh in that series, I think.
No, he wasn't in the. He wasn't.
There's
in
a
the
link
team.
here. I can click it.
No, this is his whole second stanza. Is the World Test Championship. Where he's averaging
that's what's coming around to, is when he came back in, they've all been tests. So the stats I was going to throw it is actually what you just said, is like
exactly
a shade under 60, which is
59.3.
Yeah, big stuff.
Yeah, I like Ravindra's exceptional for sure. Will O'Rourke's also exceptional, and I think there's a lot of Kiwi cricketers on the rise who have these kind of talents. I'm not saying they are Rachin Ravindra, but we have literally seen Will O'Rourke come into Test cricket and emulate Kyle Jamieson. Like when Kyle Jamieson came onto the scene, we're like, holy shit, this is like a once in a generation type of bowler. A few years later, we got another.
And we found another one 2 years later.
This is, I don't think folks are ready for like the type of cricketers that New Zealand is developing. I think it's a very important note to just leave here. Like, we have some very good, very freaky, very skillful, unique talents in New Zealand. And you're starting to see them step up. You mentioned Will Young. But you can't select Will Young ahead of Kane Williamson. You can, but you can't.
Was Williamson, has he travelled yet? Because they said he was going to miss the first test, and it was sort of up in the air on his recovery after that. Do you know if he's in the picture?
No, I don't know. I don't care.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if they just let him, keep it on ice.
Will Young's really good. you mentioned his test average, like it's only up to like 26 or something now, maybe 29,
Yeah.
28.5. So he's definitely moving up. But as we've talked about, a lot of his test batting has been in the opener position, so you're going to get out. That's what happens when you're opening the batting. He still has 750s in test cricket. Like that's not easy to do. And he averages over 40 in first class batting, and he's also got an ODI batting average of 44. So like he's a good batter, but I think you saw this once again in the test because you mentioned his first innings. He had 33 off 73 deliveries. So he's there. He's spending time at the crease. He's facing all these Indian bowlers, comes back around, 48 not out to seal the game. And he has the third highest batting average for all New Zealanders in the World Test Championship. So it goes Ravindra, Williamson, Young, averaging 36, Glenn Phillips, 35.3, Neil Wagner, shout out, 33, Daryl Mitchell, 27, Santner, 23, Tom Latham, 21, Conway, 21, Matt Henry, and then Tommy Blundell. Lower batting average than Matt Henry, smidge higher than Tim Southey, 14.6. Shout out Tommy Blundell.
Will Young averages 37.6 under the captaincy of Tom Latham through 9 test matches.
Yep.
Which I guess there's a coincidence. There's a not a coincidence. There's a link there. Is that probably when he played was when Williamson didn't play for a lot of his tests. So of course Latham would have been captaining.
You got it. Best bowlers in the World Test Championship. Matt Henry, leading wicket taker, 31 wickets and an average of 16.3. What am I saying about Will O'Rourke? He's the second leading wicket taker for New Zealand in the World Test Championship. 26 wickets and an average of 18.8. Now, this dude's a freak. And he, like, smashing hands, he's smashed hands in India. Like, this dude just doesn't need to have a bouncy deck to smash hands. He's smashed hands in New Zealand. He's smashed hands in Sri Lanka. He's smashed hands in India. That's who he is. He's got the big in swinger to right-handers away from the lefty, but he always hits the seam as well. So he's kind of a total package. And then you've got Southey, who's a swing bowler, and you've got Henry, who's a seam bowler. So it's kind of an interesting little bowling attack. Any Blackcaps notes? Any more Blackcaps notes you want to throw up? Any questions you got?
Well, Matt Henry was awesome. He bowled superbly throughout this test match. I am a little bit caught on the hypothetical because it's easy to do the like reactionary thing of well, he didn't play the games in Sri Lanka, therefore he should have played the games in Sri Lanka because he came in India and bowled really well. But I didn't have a problem with the team they selected for the first test. I think we both had big problems with the fact that they didn't try to improve it going from first test to second test. But the logic made sense when you're going in without the evidence of what the first test was going to play like after you had that and then you're playing in the same ground for the second one. It was a little bit weird that they just sat on their hands and allowed themselves to get rolled. But I'm not convinced Matt Henry playing that test would have made a difference. It might have, it might not have. I guess what I'm saying is I'm not saying it wouldn't have. I'm just saying I'm not convinced either way. I'm just not sure. I definitely don't think it's a given. Did you ever, I don't know, do you have a first instinct on that?
Well, he's not seaming the ball as much as he did in India as he did in Sri Lanka.
Exactly.
Like this was like perfect for Matt Henry. But like ultimately, you live and you learn, you move forward. Like I don't know.
Yeah.
We can't. What's the word? We can't audit what happened in Sri Lanka. They sucked. Everything sucked. That's what makes this victory so awesome. But yeah, Matt Henry's really good. He's I'm putting Matt Henry in the Neil Wagner category. Not for bowling short, because he doesn't bowl short. He doesn't need to. But his work rate. Like, you know exactly what you're getting from Matt Henry whenever he bowls. You know that Matt Henry is going to he's going to bust his ass in the 27th over he's bowled. Whether it's the 5th over, 15th over, 30th over, Matt Henry's going to show up. And I think that deserves a bit of Neil Wagner kind of mana for Matt Henry. He's not the bully of the attack, but he is the workhorse. He is going to keep showing up, and that's what he did in the second innings against India. Like, all the Blackcaps bowlers were being hit around for a while there, but Matt Henry kept showing up, and he got his wickets. Because what happens in cricket? You might be bowling really well up top, but you don't get the wickets. If you can keep showing up, if you have the fitness and stamina and skill to keep showing up later in the day, you're going to get your wickets because you're going to be bowling at the bowlers. So I don't like Matt Henry. His 3 wickets in the second innings: Ashwin, Bumrah, Siraj, and he didn't get any top order wickets, but he kept showing up. Comes back in later in the day, he gets his wickets. Sometimes you're too good with the new ball to take wickets. You're just moving it too much. Sometimes the opening batters are too good. But the thing with bowling in cricket is the best bowlers can always take wickets because they're the guys who are going to dismiss the bowlers. And that's how the best bowlers keep taking wickets. When they haven't taken the top order wickets because it's not their day, they show up later on, wrap up the tail. Ashwin scored 15, Bumrah scored 0, Siraj scored 0. Yes, Will O'Rourke took a few key wickets in the middle order, and Matt Henry just came in, wrapped the tail up, innings over, we're going to win. So shout out Matt Henry. I genuinely think he's got a bit of Neil Wagner mana building.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. I can catch a vision there. And those were important wickets. I know it's wrapping up the tail. These are supposedly the weakest batters, but like the Blackcaps couldn't really afford India to get a whole lot more runs than they did. You know, they needed to sweep through that tail, and he did that. And that is an important skill as well, because what happened in the first innings of the Blackcaps is they themselves were like 220 odd for 7 or something like that, and then Tim Southee batting at 9. Puts in a big partnership with Rachin Ravindra. Like, India didn't wrap up the Blackcaps tail. If they had, then there's 200 fewer runs probably in this test match, in which case suddenly 46 not out is not nearly as bad as it is when teams are scoring 400 in the next couple knocks. And that becomes a much closer test match. So like that is a very, very, those were huge wickets in the context of that game. And also, I will say Tim Southee only got the 2 wickets, but like you said, the snap was there, the pace was up a little bit, and the 2 wickets that he got were arguably the most important wickets in the game. So, like he got Rohit Sharma out to start the onslaught in the first innings, and what was this? He got Sarfaraz out, didn't he? So the top scorer, fella scores 150, gets him out, broke the partnership, immensely important. I thought he bowled quite well without, not a lot of reward, but this was a good test performance from Tim Southee. And finally on Matt Henry, because this was his 26th test match, which means we can split his career nice and evenly, 13 test matches and 13 test matches. His first 13 test matches leading up to January 2021, which was the game against Pakistan. So the one very first after that was in England, and then he's had the 7th against South Africa straight after. So the first 13 test matches, 31 wickets, average of 51.54. He wasn't doing so great at that point. His next 13 test matches, 72 wickets at an average of 22.19. Like his overall figures absolutely don't tell the story, because he did have this phase where he was like in and out of the team and he wasn't taking a lot of wickets when he did play, and he was struggling to get like rhythm and consistency and stuff. Now he's just all rhythm and he's all consistency. And yeah, his last couple years of Test cricket have been astoundingly good, and he has been the Blackcaps' best bowler during that span. Like, there's no debate about it. He has been their best bowler. He has taken, what did I say, 72 wickets at an average of 22.19. It's pretty incredible.
The thing that I've just sparked into my mind, like, there's been so much doom and gloom about the Blackcaps. Like, everyone put Blackcaps' success on the shoulders of Kane Williamson, Ross Taylor, BJ Wilding, Tim Southee, Neil Wagner, Trent Boult. Trent Boult, Neil Wagner go, and it's like, oh my gosh, the Blackcaps are going to suck. What's the golden generation's over? Like, no, we got Matt Henry. We still got Kyle Jamieson. We got Will O'Rourke. We got Rachin Ravindra. Like, just chill out. New Zealand cricket is actually pretty good. And I think that's a solid place to finish our discussion here, because we need to at least try to talk about some other sports. I don't know how much time we're going to have, but we're going to have a crack to talk about some other sports. But the final message is, personally, I believe New Zealand cricket is really good. We've had ups and downs, as we've talked about, but I personally think the system, the structure, the teams, everything about New Zealand cricket is pretty good. Someone else who's pretty good, Chris Wood. He just scored a goal, and it was a goal for Nottingham Forest, but it was outside the box.
Exactly. Rarity for Chris Wood. He's only got a couple of those in his career.
He banged it in from outside the box. So shout out Chris Wood, another goal. I'm sure Nico will have some yarns in the Flying Kiwis. He's got a tweet up already, so check that out. And also just on the cricket, Ford Trophy cricket was played on Sunday. So Auckland defeated CD, Canterbury defeated Wellington, Otago defeated Northern Districts. I did a little recap. We got more games on Wednesday. We've also got the subscriber podcast where we'll talk about it a bit deeper. Best performers, Will O'Donnell hit a century. Angus McKenzie, Will O'Donnell for Auckland, hit a century. He was the third leading run scorer last season in the Ford Trophy. Angus McDonald took 5 wickets for Canterbury. And Otago's team unit played really well against Northern Districts, scored a heap of runs. Blokes were whacking boundaries. There were like 6 dudes who just smashed it around, and then they bowled out Northern Districts pretty easily in Whangarei. So that was a good performance from Otago. But that's why you should tap in with the subscriber podcast through Patreon and Substack, because that's where we flesh those type of yarns out a bit deeper. Because right now, we need to talk some football. I was lucky enough to go to the Auckland FC game. And it was genuinely like a Warriors game, but football. And I was thinking about this because Auckland played their Fawn Trophy game at Bay Oval, and Auckland doesn't have a Test cricket venue. So the Auckland cricketing menu, they don't have a cricket ground to host Auckland. In Auckland, there's no cricket ground available to host Auckland. So if you're not from Auckland and you want to talk shit about Auckland, I'm from Auckland, and I'm giving you permission to say that Auckland's a pretty shitty cricketing area. It's all right. We don't have a Test venue. We can't even host an Auckland cricket team. So compare that to Wellington, you got the Basin Reserve. Compare that to Christchurch, you got Hagley Oval. Auckland, maybe 5th or 6th for Test cricket cities. Or just cricketing cities in New Zealand. So if you don't like Auckland, shout out. Cricket is your easy avenue to hating Auckland and talking shit about Auckland. What Auckland does have is Mount Smart. And the Mount Smart Temple is it's completely different to any other sporting venue in New Zealand. We've seen it for the Warriors for a while now. And the Warriors have consistently had crowds over 20,000. And if you see them on TV, you've got people of all ages, sizes, dress up, cultural backgrounds. Every type of person you can imagine is at a Warriors game in Auckland. And it is a crazy atmosphere because Mount Smart helps encapsulate that atmosphere. There were less signs, and there are a few sporting differences between the rugby league crowd and the football crowd. Ultimately, though, same thing for Auckland FC. It was actually a bigger crowd than the Warriors usually get at Mount Smart, but there were people of all different cultural backgrounds, all ages, and you also had so there were less signs, but you had the port in the south stand behind the goal. They're going nuts. Now again, you're not getting 24,000 people as you did for Auckland FC. You're not getting that at any rugby game below the All Blacks in New Zealand, right? So I don't think you wrote about it and you said the crowd was massive, so you were aware, but I don't know if the rugby netball type of Kiwi sports fan understands what Auckland FC did at Mount Smart on Saturday and what they are going to do. Because I'll say it once again, when Auckland FC and Wellington Phoenix play against each other, that's going to be the craziest sporting event in New Zealand. And I, having watched one game at Mount Smart of Auckland FC, it was amazing. And I think I found there was only one Warriors crowd that was bigger. Like the Warriors have only hit 24,000 once, maybe this year. Auckland FC, first time playing, they drew that crowd. And as long as they're playing well, I think they can maintain one of the best sporting atmospheres in New Zealand. And once again, whether it's the Blues, whether it's the Chiefs, Crusaders, or NPC Rugby, Black Ferns Rugby, none of that is happening to the extent of what we saw with Auckland FC. Let alone the Warriors or anything else, but credit to Auckland FC because it was an amazing atmosphere, it was an amazing occasion to be at. Now, aside from observing, I saw Logan Rogerson, and before he scored his goal, he was very frustrated because someone didn't pass the ball to him on the far post. And I was like, oh, because that was right in front of me. I was like, oh, see that? Oh, he's frustrated. You're here. Next time he comes down, he gets the ball, he slots in that second goal, and that came after he scored a banger from outside the box for the All Whites at North Harbour Stadium. Mount Smart is so much better than North Harbour Stadium. It's not even funny. But Logan Rogerson, bangs in a goal from outside the box, and then he had this, it was kind of like an awkward finish for Auckland FC. It looked awkward, but he was just calmly slotting it in the bottom right-hand corner. It was kind of exquisite finish from Logan Rogerson.
Nonchalant was the word I used in the write-up.
Yeah. And it's I think that's the only footballing observation I've got. So I'll leave the footballing stuff for you. What did you make of Auckland FC's first game ever? First win ever? First goals ever?
Yeah, first goal being an own goal. I'm wary about getting too much into crowd ideas because the A-League is just obsessed with crowd figures, which is in a weird, it's just a strange part of the culture. And it's been something that's been held over the Wellington Phoenix for quite a while back when they were sort of, fighting for their licenses and stuff. It's well, do you get enough people to the stands, blah, blah, blah. Well, their crowds last year were awesome because the Phoenix had the Phoenix's home, the overall average wasn't amazing, but it definitely peaked for finals. And the Phoenix's home game in the semis against Melbourne Victory was the highest crowd of the entire A-League season. And the highest one, it would have been the highest one the year before as well. So that's the context. And the Knicks didn't have a very good crowd on the weekend. It was, Sunday afternoon. You'd have thought it'd be a nice time for it. It was weather looked all right. First game of the season, but they only had about, I can't remember what the number was, but I think it was less than 8K. However, I'm saying similar to what you said there, let's pump the brakes on what Phoenix crowds might look like until we've seen them host Auckland FC in 2 weeks. Because if you're a Phoenix fan, you're turning up to that game specifically. That's the one you circled. And I think there's definitely, I find aspects of this in every context. This isn't just a Phoenix versus Auckland FC thing. I find the same thing about the way people talk about rival Premier League clubs. Pretty cringy sometimes. The way that's sort of like this manual, I have to hate you because you like a different team sort of thing. But there's a joy to rivalry as well. It's just fun to have teams that you're like, yeah, we want to beat them kind of thing. And that once you actually get a game back and forth between those two, I think that's going to really amp up. I don't know. I think both teams are going to benefit from this. And Chiefy's said this as well. Wellington Phoenix coach. I've heard him say this a few times. It's for the good of the game, for the culture, for the fan. This stuff, it's going to be great, especially from the way that Auckland FC started, which is just a fantastic crowd. And I think the Warriors deserve a lot of credit for that crowd too, because they set the benchmark at Mount Smart. It's probably a little bit easier to get to than a lot of the other Auckland stadiums as well. It's certainly easier than North Harbour Stadium for damn sure. It's still not great. Just the problem that Auckland has in general with these things. But there's never any problem with people getting into
football. What happened? Tell us.
Yeah, there's just credit where it's due to the Warriors, because I think they didn't just set a precedent for turning up crowds. I think they also kind of reinvigorated Kiwi sporting attendances like after the COVID stuff. I think that the Warriors did that, and now Auckland FC are feeding off that, and that's beautiful. That's great. That's awesome. Football wise, I thought it was a pretty good performance. I like the defensive setup. I think their imports look very good. I think they were probably a little bit shy on ideas at times going forward, but I think that's to be expected, especially when you got a bunch of guys from different nationalities coming from different leagues for a foundation team that doesn't have any sort of like context to it. They haven't played before. There's nothing to build off. It's just a blank slate. I think we'll see them get better and better as we go, particularly as Guillermo Mai settles in up front, a little Uruguayan striker. He's actually, I look up his height. He's a lot taller than I thought he was. He sort of played like a little striker, but he's not small. But he is definitely a guy who's not going to try like back to goal Chris Wood, flick on headers, bring the ball down on his chest. He's a little bit more of a drop into pockets, link up kind of thing, as you saw for the way he put Hiroki Sakai, little sort of overlap ball for him leading to the first goal. Both goals scored by fullback. Not scored. Both goals assisted by fullbacks. Sakai on one side, Francis de Vries on the other side. That was great. Thought a couple more Kiwi starters than I expected. Francis de Vries put my mind at ease about where he was at. I wasn't sure because I watched him a lot in the National League last season, where he was coming back after a serious knee injury. It recovered from an ACL at that point, and he didn't feel like a professional player playing National League. He was one of the best National League players, but he wasn't out there like running the show in a way that I thought a guy who was coming from Swedish top tier football to playing at Medill's Farm would have done. But you got to keep that in mind with the recovery and his fitness and stuff. He looks sharp in this game. That was cool. I love the Nando Peineke, Dan Hall defensive partnership. They're both very tall, both very strong defenders. They're going to be a menace. And then Alex Paulson just didn't really have a tough save to make, but he looked comfortable and he kept another clean sheet, just as he did so many times last season for the Phoenix. Loved Louis Verstraete in defensive midfield, sort of tall Belgian fella. He especially in the first half. I think he tied in the second half, and I looked it up, and he hadn't actually played a competitive game since like April, so that would make sense if you're 6 months out of big footy. And the imports did arrive a bit later than most of the local guys, so they're probably just going to be a little bit more undercooked in general. So I think Verstraete did tire in the second half. But first half, him and Gallegos, they ran the show. Like they were absolutely bossing that midfield. They weren't necessarily doing enough with the ball once they won it as a team, not as these individuals, but those two in particular, just winning tackles, winning interceptions, just running all over Brisbane Roar at that thing. And beautifully, like, important aspect of this, because I think you can compare this quite directly to the Phoenix game, where the Phoenix, they were looking pretty good in midfield at winning the ball. They also weren't quite doing enough with it. There was a few little aspects where it's like you can see what they're building towards, but it's not all there with the Phoenix as well. But the difference is the Phoenix, they did get that one goal. They scored late in the half versus Auckland FC scored nice and early, which must have been a great moment in the crowd to get a goal out of the way so swiftly, even if it was an own goal. It was a really well worked move. Love the way Sakai because he got clattered as he played the ball through to Rogerson. He got smashed, and then Rogerson squares it in for Guillermo Mai. And Sakai all the time gets back up. He's not complaining about a free kick. He's not, he sees the move unfolding. Because he gets up in such a hurry and makes the overlapping run, no one's tracking him because the other guy's fallen over too. So he's just through to be able to pick a spot, put it in a good area, and the defender didn't know what to do with it, so he kicked it into his own net. It was a really well worked move. Really well worked move. The difference between the Phoenix performance and the Auckland FC performance is that the Phoenix kind of let it get away from them in the last half hour, whereas Auckland FC, at a pivotal time, Logan Rogerson pops up, scores a goal to make it 2-0, which really just broke the back of Brisbane Roar, whereas the Phoenix didn't do that, didn't score a second goal when they needed to, and allowed Western United to finish the stronger team and come back and grab an equaliser. So a little bit disappointing from how the Knicks managed that, but also there's another difference between those two teams is the Knicks were missing a lot of players. It didn't feel like how many injuries they actually had because a lot of the injuries are new guys who we haven't actually seen play for the Phoenix. So Paulo Retre, Marco Rojas, a returning player, but he didn't play very much, 12 years or whatever it was since he last played for the Phoenix. And Stefan Kolikovsky also, I don't know if he's injured. I think it's more that he was signed at short notice and wasn't ready yet. And then Sam Sutton ruled out late notice. Lucas Kelly healed also. So there's a lot of injuries there. And I think you saw that in the selection with a few youngsters played in positions you wouldn't necessarily expect them to play, let alone expect them to be playing full stop. So understandable. But yeah, I think as far as Auckland FC goes, it's a perfect platform to build off. It was a great crowd. It was a great day at Mount Smart. It was a victory, which is the most important thing, but it was a victory built on top of a strong, sturdy defensive setup. And you can see ways in which they've got a lot more room to improve in the other areas of their game, like the in possession stuff. You can see how that's going to build moving forward as well. So great stuff. Great stuff. What a monumentous day in Kiwi football, that one.
It was disappointing for the Phoenix because the goal they conceded came right after Alex Rufer just unleashed a nice little pullback twirl on the edge of his own box, and it was like Alex Rufer does some crazy shit. He's not just a tackling midfielder. He does some razzle dazzle, and like it was one of those ones where the 8,000 people in attendance definitely went, "Ooh, wow." But then the Wellington Phoenix conceded their goal. However, I was actually quite impressed with the youngsters in that Phoenix game, especially the left back. I thought the left back was lively. I'm not too clued in with their names because they all
Nathan Walker.
They all looked fairly similar, and it's like Hughes and Walker, and it's like I don't necessarily know the difference right now, but I can see how playing with a few youngsters might not have been the recipe for success in that game, because it did seem like things got a bit casual around when they conceded the goal. Not in reference to what Alex Rufer did, because his skill, his razzle dazzle was an effective maneuver in that moment. But everything else just kind of felt a bit casual in the way that you might get with younger players just settling into the A-League. But now again, this is the theme of New Zealand sport. We've just got these young footballers who can just step into A-League.
Yeah, sorry, caught me in a drinks break. The cool thing with Nathan Walker is he is a guy who has a little bit of a because he played for Fencibles up in Auckland as like sort of club he broke into senior football at, and he made the New Zealand under-17 World Cup squad last year playing for Fencibles, who were not a Northern League team. There was a second-tier team in the Auckland competition, with sort of Northern football competition, and he made the New Zealand under-17s out of that. Like happens after the under-17 World Cup in general, the Phoenix the last couple of times have made a little bit of a point, men and women as well, of swooping through and being like, he's good, we'll sign him. She's good, we'll sign her. Picking up a few of these players after the under-17 World Cup. So he was one of them. Dylan Gardner was part of that group. He's playing a lot for the reserve team at the moment. There's one or two others, I think. Nick Murphy might have been there. Also, Matt Ford, goalkeeper. Was it Matt Ford? One of them, anyway. So there's a few of these. There's a few of these guys who are in the same boat as Nathan Walker. But yeah, he's a speedy winger. He's not really a wing back, but which was the role he was asked to play. I think in general, what he was given there was a fairly limited role, where it's just like try drop in, get the ball and dribble it forward, like try make some overlapping. Right, it wasn't a lot of it wasn't a very complicated thing. They kept it simple for him and just asked him to play to his strength, which is his speed really, and his dribbling. So yeah, I thought he was pretty bright. I think Matt Sheridan struggled a little bit at the right centre back kind of role. He sort of got picked off a little bit for their goal as well in the build up. So some aspects of that. But Isaac Hughes, who played several times last season, I thought was brilliant. He's the one who flicked the header on for Costa Barbarouses to score. He was winning headers all day long. He's just going to come in and take Finn Sermon's spot, and he's going to do pretty well at it because he did pretty well last year whenever he was called upon. Usually playing in a back three. They did play a back three this time. I don't know if that fully worked for them. I also don't know if that's really their main plan, though. I think it might just be because of the players they were missing, they might have altered things. So we'll figure that stuff out down the line when we see them play a little bit more. But yeah, there's stuff to build on there. But the bottom line, the most important thing from the Phoenix game is, yeah, that academy procession is not stopping, because you didn't just have Nathan Walker as an academy debutant. You also had Jaden Smith coming on near the end, tall Nelson origin centre back. Also, someone who has some Finn Sermon vibes about him. Specifically, I think they're at the same height, Sermon and Jaden Smith. So that's pretty cool. 2 more debutants. That's 9 academy debutants who've played under Chiefy in not well, 9 academy players who've been given A-League debuts under Chiefy in 1 season plus 1 game. That's a pretty good record. There were none the season before that.
The last thing I want to ask you about the Phoenix is, like, because you referenced a few players are missing, so it's hard to say if this is how the Phoenix are going to play week in, week out.
Yeah.
The Oluwayemi, he is no Alex Paulson. Let me just say that. He's no Alex Paulson. Are we going to see him fluffing around on the goal kicks every single time?
Probably. Most times, at least. But I've heard a fair bit of this. Even on the commentary track, you're hearing them sort of a little bit antsy when he's got the ball at his feet. I'm thinking, it's a little bit like Alex Rufer doing his little behind the heel little turn out of trouble. I didn't see anything wrong. I didn't see him lose the ball.
It's not when the ball's at his feet, because it's a goal kick and he doesn't make a pass. And every second he doesn't make a pass, pressure is building, and you're doing that for every goal kick. So now we've got 5 goal kicks in a row where it feels like the Phoenix are under the pump, and it's just like, I kind of wish you were Alex Paulson.
Yeah, well, it does. Variety is the spice of life, so it's always good to mix it up with a few long ones now and there and just show that. But they do want, like, if they're trying to play short and the team's pressing them, they kind of want that. Like, they're drawing the team forward so that they can get more players there and pass it through them, and then you got the overloads elsewhere, and you got speedy players who can attack and transition. So they're trying to do that. I mean, the one time Oluwayemi really, the only time he buggered up with the ball at his feet kind of thing was when he tried to hoof one clear and he smacked it straight into Scott Wooden. But that was him doing the opposite. It was him trying to clear the ball away and mess it up. So there's obviously connection stuff kicks that needs to improve there. He's a new goalkeeper, kicks. And we'll see specifically, with the goal kicks, if that's we'll see how they work those things out, because he was playing the first game for a new team, and there were some defenders who wouldn't ordinarily be in that defensive line as well.
Beauty. We need to stop it there, because we could go for another 5 hours, but that's not wise. Anything we didn't touch on today, mate, we will definitely have a yarn on the subscriber podcast, so stay tuned. Check us out on Patreon and Substack. Big up yourself, love yourself, kia kaha, stay beautiful, churcher.